There's this one, SCP-001 Orange? Okay, let's check this one out. I don't know. I've never seen SCP-001 Orange. I know about the Gate Guardian. I know that one.
The SR-47 sniper rifle slotted together effortlessly. Even after so many years of combat usage, the weapon was in pristine condition. In all the time Agent Harris had owned the gun, though, the thousands of times
Agent Harris, sorry, we got a name.
Not once had it jammed.
Let's go, Harris!
And that was fortunate, because she had to move quickly. In a clearing about 300 meters in front of her were their targets. Capable of teleporting in a split second, she needed to be sure that her team would be able to finish the job quickly and efficiently. She looked through the scope slotted onto her rifle and kicked out the bipod, resting it on a tree stump. Now she just had to wait for the signal.
Guardian creatures? What was that?
The marsh, trying her
best
like a giant
to spot her fellow agents,
but they were also well camouflaged. Even though she knew the exact spot where they would be, she couldn't see anyone. She'd always wanted to see the Himalayas. It had been on her bucket list to climb Mount Everest as a child, but the world had changed since then. Mount Everest was gone. In fact, the majority of Nepal had vanished, replaced by an enormous marsh full almost exclusively of pink ferns and droopy trees that seemed to sag to one side, unable to support their own weight. The most striking natural wonder on planet Earth had been replaced by a landscape that was flat, wet, and alien. Agent Harris curled her finger around the trigger and took aim to her sights. 2 minutes passed. Then the gentle whistle of a sparrow drifted over to her in the humid air. Except, of course, it couldn't be a sparrow. To the best of her knowledge, sparrows had gone extinct. With a snarl of anger, Agent Harris squeezed the trigger. She felt the silent sniper rifle kick her shoulder. If they wanted war, they sure as hell would get it.
What, the birds?
The destruction of the world began in 2017.
Yeah, get out of here,
Its designation was SCP-Orange-A. And as often happens with these kind of things, no one saw it coming. The SCP Foundation, having dedicated decades to researching potential world-destroying events, was totally blindsided by what happened the day the weasels showed up. Weasels, you ask? That's right. But before we explain, a question for you. Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Regardless if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human who lives in this world who is going through a hard time, therapy can give you tools to approach your life in a very different way. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible, and this is an important mission because finding a therapist can be really hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in my description. It's betterhelp.com/SCP explained. Clicking that link helps support this channel, but it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. And because finding a therapist is a little like dating, if you don't really fit with that therapist, which is a common thing with therapy, you can easily switch to a new therapist.
That's a good tagline,
no additional cost
without
stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. So if you're struggling, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/SCP.
My AI therapist
Thank you
does
again,
all my therapy
BetterHelp,
for me.
for supporting this channel. And now, as we were saying,
also my AI therapist is an anime wife.
A man called Harlan Stump was the first human to make contact with the weasels. He was the groundskeeper at Site 59. Harlan was making his usual weekly trips around the perimeter of the courtyard on his ride-along lawnmower, watching baseball on his phone all the way when, out of nowhere, the aliens appeared. Just 2 meters in front of him, a squadron of 11 weasels materialized.
Did they, or was he just on his phone the whole time?
SCP-Orange-B stand at a minimum of 3 meters tall. With 16 legs and an exoskeleton carapace, they share a resemblance with terrestrial insects. Their bodies are segmented, composed of a head, primary thorax, secondary thorax, tertiary thoracic cloister, abdomen, and tail. With a hard segmented shell covering their backs and no apparent sensory organs, aside from a radula on their heads, they are an intimidating presence. Most striking about them, however, is the most delicate part of their appearance. sensory organs. Aside from a radula on their heads,
How are they dangerous? They have no
an
senses.
intimidating presence. Most
They can't see
striking
you,
about
they
them,
can't touch you,
however,
they can't
is the
smell you,
most
they
delicate
can't.
part of their appearance.
I don't
On
know
their
where you at.
backs, each weasel has an array of flora growing in a kind of garden. It appears that each weasel has a different array of flowers growing from their backs. Understanding the meaning of these gardens can be difficult, but it appears the more extravagant it is, the higher ranking the individual weasel is. The 11 weasels that appeared
that's
before
awesome.
Harlan Stump each had
The
a
flowers
very
are like a
vibrant
badge of
garden
honor.
indeed, but no more so than the weasel held aloft in an ornate palanquin. Harlan Stump stopped mowing and stared at the aliens for approximately 13 seconds, at which point he let out
Maybe
a
you
sigh,
should
pressed
have
play
a-
on his baseball game, and continued mowing the lawn.
Of
He
course.
spent too many years groundskeeping Site 59 to get spooked by anything as harmless as giant teleporting insects. Just 3 more weeks and he would be retired.
Don't
Until then,
say it like
he was
that.
avoiding nonsense like the plague. Except his phone had disappeared. Harlan stared down at the empty space, confusion meeting his eyebrows together, before looking up and seeing the handset in the hands of the alien sitting on its regal throne. The
That's
smartphone made
mine!
a loud screeching noise, and then all of a sudden began to flick
Don't
between
look at my
snippets
hentai!
of YouTube videos, each clip lasting just a couple
Not
of
my
seconds.
Minecraft videos!
After a moment, Harlan realized that the alien was using the videos to speak to him. The words were being picked out from all these different videos to stitch
Not my
together
nature
a
videos.
sentence. Barely. Hi diddly ho, neighborinos! This
Was that
is
South Park?
Foundation. Reports indicate Foundation is locally the masters of the universe.
Hey, man!
Isn't that right,
Sorry.
darling? Question mark. Keen to finish his mowing and avoid further nonsense, Harlan had to concede that he should probably talk to these aliens, if only to get his phone back. He told them he liked the gardens on their backs. Why, thank you! Gardening is kind of our thing. Well, quick question. Is your species capable of dying? Harlan gulped. He'd been
Oh,
around
it's
long
using
enough
the
to
freaking
see
phone to
where this
talk.
was going. The conversation was brief. Harlan kept glancing at his phone, desperately hoping that these aliens hadn't somehow broken it, and that it hadn't lost his place in the match, until all of a sudden, Harlan Stump disappeared, as did his ride-on lawnmower, his
Not the
smartphone,
mower!
and a patch of lawn, replaced by a roughly 10-meter circle of Antarctic ice and snow. No
What?
one is certain yet how the weasels are able to do it. All that is known is that they can. The phenomenon could be
teleport
known as
things.
juxtaposing. Matter from one location could be instantaneously switched with matter from a different location. It is how the weasels first arrived on planet Earth, triggering the event of
Oh,
SCP-001
bro, that's the sickest My Hero
Orange
Academia
Dash
power
A.
ever. I want to be
Orange
a
Dash A
juxtaposing
lasted
guy.
for just
Yeah, I'm
2
a
hours,
juxtapose you, bro.
but it changed the course of
You
humanity
can call me
forever.
Jax.
On the
Or
29th
Jux.
of
Is it
April,
Jax or Juxtapose? You
2078,
call me Jux. They call me Jux,
48.52% of
the
the Earth's
juxtaposer.
habitable surface area
Wait, no. Wait, that sounds bad.
and rematerialized half a kilometer above the South
Juxtaposer.
Pole. Cities and towns from all across planet Earth, one
Freaking
by
A.
one, disappeared and reappeared in the air above the South Pole, where they
Oh,
promptly
nice.
fell 500
Trophy
meters,
house.
causing back-to-back seismic events.
If you're a penguin or a polar bear
DC,
out there, like, yo.
Beijing, and London were
Nice.
targeted first, followed by Tokyo, Delhi, and then a number of capital cities from Europe. This 2-hour window resulted in freak weather events as
Wow.
minus 50-degree pockets of air, kilometers across, replaced the disappearing cities. It is disputed as to who launched the first nuclear warhead, whether it was done by
Probably the
accident,
US.
out of fear, or as a strategic attack against a group of weasels. Orange-A was simply too chaotic and destructive for humanity ever to be able to know what happened in that short period of time. The result, however, was a number of nuclear explosions
cold
raging
air
across the
being
planet before
introduced
the
into-
cities
into
in
hot
charge
air
of launching them
environments and all
were
kinds
also
of- that's
transported
crazy, dude.
to the South Pole. While the weasels were capable of experiencing juxtaposition without any apparent physical harm, terrestrial life forms were less fortunate. During the process of juxtaposition, the bonds
Aw,
between
really?
each and every cell are broken. While organic life does get transported to the new location, it undergoes immediate liquefaction. Not a single Earth-born life form has been observed surviving a juxtaposition event.
Well,
In
that's
that 2-hour
cheating.
window,
You can't
6.9
say
billion
inorganic stuff, they
Humanity
teleport, but if
had
you're human,
lost.
suddenly
This
that'll
event
work.
triggered the use of
That's
Project
BS.
Yellow,
That's bogus.
an emergency evacuation
That's cheating.
protocol that occurs at the point where the survival of the human race seems to be virtually zero. A small band of specially
this is a
chosen
wrap. We'll check it out
individuals
after this.
were
What am I doing? Thank you,
evacuated
thank
to a
you.
pocket dimension, where they were put into cryosleep to wait until the Earth was habitable once again. In the days following the events of Orange-A, the true invasion began. Choosing
Oh,
the
that wasn't
Sahara
even the
Desert as
invasion.
their arrival point,
That was just the
the
scouts.
weasels started to appear in legions. Millions and millions of them filled the desert sands and went about populating their new planet. But what was their purpose? Well, fortunately, we've been able to
what do you mean?
salvage
They
a
freaking
modest
obviously
amount of data
terraformed
that
the whole
can
thing and lived
inform
there.
us of why they're
And then
here
bang as
and
much as
what
you
their
want until you have
plans
like a
are.
freaking
The
whole
weasel that
planet full
first
of weevils.
appeared to Harlan's stump just outside Site-59 has been designated SCP Orange Prime. It is believed that
Orange
this
Prime.
weasel, in particular, is their leader. Whether Prime is simply the leader of this colony or the wider species is yet to be confirmed. Security cameras were able to capture the interaction as it took place within Site-59's grounds. In their conversation, Orange Prime explains their purpose to Harlan through YouTube clips on his phone. Long story short, weasels have come from Homeworld Dimension for fulfill a long-standing mutual agreement with Grandma. This is one of many new homes. This is a pretty nice place for weasels. This land is my land, from California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for weasels to garden, to farm, to create beauty, to spread good vibes, to cultivate, to remake, to terraform, etc., etc. Since this encounter, no human has been able to get close enough to
From
Orange
the sound of it, they're making it seem like either they were promised by their ancestors or even maybe our ancestors that they could come back here at some point or something like that.
Prime to engage the weasel in further conversation. This snippet of footage is all that humanity has to understand why this alien species has slaughtered billions of us. 4 months later, Agent Harris lay flat in the marshlands, firing her sniper rifle at the weasels gathering in a clearing ahead of them. Their operation looked like overkill. It always did. It was of utmost importance that they strike quickly and without mercy. Sustained heavy gunfire from all sides, combined with RPG fire and the use of incendiary weapons, made short work of the weasels. All of these weapons were necessary to pierce the heavy armor that covered their backs. But that was the reason it felt like overkill. It felt that way because the weasels never fought back. They would not attack, defend themselves, help their fallen allies, or even beg for their lives. They would simply stand idly by as they were gunned down. That is, until the incendiary grenades arrived. The pink ferns filling the marshlands caught fire and began to curl and smoke heavily. As soon as that happened, the weasels sprung into action, quickly splashing water onto the leaves, trying their best to save the plants. The incendiary grenades were not necessary. They did very little damage to the weasels themselves. The reason the platoons used the grenades was that it was one way they had found to distress their alien invaders in any way. It was a small revenge they could take for the billions of people who had lost their lives over the prior few months. Agent Harris pumped 5 extra shots into the corpse of a weasel
where it's
before
like
standing
the
down and going
environment
to
is more
examine her
important than the actual
handiwork. They had
individual.
been hunting Orange Prime. Rumors had suggested that their primary target had been lurking in the Himalayan region, but that had obviously proven to be false. Among all the bodies on the ground, there was no sign of the fearless leader. Frustration boiled in Harris as she kicked a corpse. The thick shell hurt her foot. She must have broken her toe.
I love they're
At
assuming
that moment,
the
a
Warriors
rustling
just
noise
wanted their
came from the
leaders
other side of
taken
the
down.
trees.
Like, you don't know,
Soon,
like,
dozens more. Hundreds
look how
more
many there
weasels
are,
were
bro.
walking
Like,
through
if you
the
don't think
marsh.
one of these
In a
is
split
just
second,
not gonna
her
just pop
platoon
out new
opened
plants
fire.
and just become a
Tracer
new leader.
rounds lashed through the trees, and the
What you
orange
mean?
glow of fire danced in every direction. But there were more weasels, many more of them. Agent Harris felt her stomach knot as she fired her rifle
I thought you
into
said
the
they don't
crowd.
defend
There were too
themselves.
many, simply too many. They were going to run out of ammo before they had a chance to shoot down each and every one of them. And she was right. The firefight lasted for 30 minutes before the remaining soldier ran out of ammunition. Dozens of weasel bodies littered the marsh, floating in the water. Dozens more weasels stood encircling the group. That's when the humming started. Whenever a juxtaposition event occurs, it is always accompanied by the weasels humming to themselves. It is unclear whether this is the cause of the juxtaposition or simply a ritual that they perform, but every soldier has come to know
they're
that
using
sound,
sound waves
and
to
each one of
frickin'
them fears it in
teleport
the pit
you.
of their stomach. So
I've
they
heard
started
weird
to
conspiracy
disappear all
theories
around
about
her
people
one
saying
by
that
one,
sound waves could
replaced by
potentially
puffs
open
of
portals
cold
to other
air with
dimensions and stuff.
snowflakes still gently hanging in the breeze. The human
Jump out of
population
the
of
way,
planet
Harris!
Earth dwindled
Dodge roll,
as the
dodge roll,
weasel
Elden Ring,
population
dodge roll!
boomed. large swaths of the planet were terraformed one by one to make room for alien flora. The South Pole became a larger and larger dumping
could they
ground
just
for all
teleport?
the detritus that had once been the most celebrated works of the human race. The Mona Lisa was torn and forgotten, buried under many kilometers of concrete, exposed sewage works, and apartment complexes. And the situation only got worse in October. Acting against prior instructions from the Foundation, the Global Occult Coalition launched Project Popko, a 200-megaton nuclear warhead, directly at a large weasel population center. As the warhead began its descent, the entire sky turned a solid dark blue. Project Popko immediately fell out of contact, as did all satellites that had been orbiting the planet. The sun, moon, and stars could not be seen. The entire sky was just a uniform dark blue. In a desperate attempt to find out what was going on, the Foundation launched a manned rocket in the direction of Popko's most recent coordinates. Contact with the rocket was lost after just 9 minutes. This is the most recent known account of events from inside that rocket. All of a sudden, just a few minutes into the flight, warning alarms started going off all over the cockpit. The radar was picking up a solid object blocking their path. Gathering around the readouts, the crew came to a very quick conclusion that the dark blue that had been filling the sky was actually a solid object that was encasing the Earth. But rather than abort the mission, the crew decided to persevere. Having witnessed so much death and destruction over the previous year,
did they just face plant into the Dyson
rather
sphere?
go out and crashing a rocket into a blue wall than join the billions of humans liquefied in a pile in Antarctica. Closing their eyes, bracing for impact, the crew readied themselves for their now inevitable deaths.
Dude, they pulled the freaking
Instead, the rocket was able to force its way through the dense blue object, falling apart as it went. Ground control lost contact with the ship. Nothing. And then a few seconds of audio. The crew had made it. They had somehow managed to pierce their way through the blue shell that was surrounding their planet, and were out into, not space, the Earth. The entire planet had been juxtaposed. Willkommen! Bienvenue! Welcome to an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at Heaven. Now go check out SCP-001, 15 files protected by Memetic Kill Agent, and SCP-001, you are the anomaly.
So what, did they juxtapose the entire freaking planet, to their dimension? I don't know, but I guess they like it. Freaking A. That's an interesting one, but I feel like I have so many more questions. Ayoo, be sure to join the crew. Please like, follow, and subscribe. And hey, if you like that video, you should check out this stuff.